terminal phase of American primacy will not begin with a launch-on warning alert. That is a 20th century scenario. The kinetic cost to defeat the United States is prohibitive. The cost to paralyze it is not. The strategic vector is no longer fire. It is silence. CSIS reports detail the true asymmetric threat, the severing of subsea data cables and the blinding of satellite constellations. This is the kill switch for a globalized economy. Without data, there is no SWIFT, no market, no Fedwire. A systemic liquidity event is triggered not by a bomb, but by a dial tone. The entire digital architecture of Western finance becomes a catastrophic liability. This protocol creates the blind Leviathan, a nation-state with unmatched kinetic force, but its command and control apparatus is severed. Its leadership is isolated. This is the precondition for a solvency crisis that cannot be contained. The fundamental question is, why? Why pivot from conventional military deterrence to systemic sabotage? The answer is a solvency crisis. A kinetic war against the United States is unwinnable for any near-peer adversary. The cost-benefit analysis is terminal. It is not a battle. It is state-level bankruptcy proceedings executed with missiles. CSS analysis confirms this calculus. For a state like Russia, a protracted, unpopular war functions as a catastrophic domestic liability. Every deployed asset is a drain on a fragile treasury. Every casualty is a debit against political legitimacy. The war in Ukraine is not just a military operation. It is a solvency event, forcing a strategic reevaluation under extreme economic duress. This weakness forces the pivot. When symmetric confrontation equals suicide, the only logical path is asymmetry. As detailed in analyses of Russia's hybrid war doctrine, the battle space is no longer geographic, it is systemic. The objective shifts from destroying an enemy's army to triggering a cascading failure in the socio-economic architecture that supports it. The motive is now clear. The adversary cannot afford to defeat the United States kinetically, but it can create the conditions for the U.S. to defeat itself. This is the core of asymmetric strategy. Apply low-cost, high-impact pressure on known vulnerabilities to trigger a systemic solvency or legitimacy crisis internally. It is the most leveraged, cost-effective form of modern warfare. The kinetic cost curve has inverted. The Royal United Services Institute, RUSI, reports the new battlefield math. A $5 million main battle tank can now be neutralized by a $500 FPV drone. This is not a simple weapon exchange. It is a systemic economic attack. This is the democratization of violence, the decoupling of lethal capability from nation-state industrial power. An adversary no longer needs a trillion-dollar budget to challenge a superpower. They need a shipping container of disposable, high-leverage assets. The objective is not to win a tank-for-tank engagement. The objective is to impose an asymmetric cost, turning America's primary military advantage, capital-intensive platforms, into a fatal economic liability. The strategy is to force a solvency crisis by making the cost of defense unsustainable. Every dollar of high-tech hardware becomes a target for pennies on the adversary's dollar. This is economic attrition at scale. The instability you are witnessing globally is not random. It is a laboratory. Regions like South Africa or the fractures observed in allied nations like Canada are not the core threat. They are gray zone staging areas, live fire test beds for the weapons that will be deployed against the United States. The operational blueprint is clear. According to RUSI and CSIS analysis, the gray zone is the space between peace and war, where an adversary can perfect their attack vectors without triggering a kinetic response. The hybrid war model, refined by Russia, is not limited to Ukraine. It is a scalable methodology. Every action in these proxy states is a data point. When an adversary tests the fragility of a foreign power grid, they are gathering metrics on the resilience of Western infrastructure. When they amplify political division, as warned by Pence regarding Minnesota's internal fractures, they are calibrating the exact frequency required to shatter American political cohesion. This is a strategy of asymmetric leverage. The objective is not to defeat the U.S. Navy. It is to calculate the precise pressure required to trigger a systemic solvency or legitimacy crisis from within. These regional flare-ups are the calibration phase for the main event, a pre-calculated attack on the U.S. system itself, designed to be irreversible. The nuclear command protocol is known as launch-on warning. It is not a suggestion. It is a pre-authorized, systemic response to verified data of an inbound kinetic strike. The logic is to launch retaliatory assets before they are destroyed in their silos. This protocol is entirely dependent on the integrity of the early warning system, a network of satellites and radar installations. Analysts at institutions like RUSI and CSIS assess that an adversary's most effective vector is not a missile, but a cyber attack that blinds this system. This creates a fog of digital war. The screens go black, the data feeds sever. The commander is presented with an absence of information. The critical question becomes, is the silence an indicator of peace, or is it the indicator of a successful enemy first strike that has blinded the network? This forces a zero-sum choice. Inaction risks the complete decapitation of the United States. A launch, however, risks initiating a global nuclear exchange based on a digital ghost, an attack that never happened. The adversary leverages this protocol, forcing the system to turn on itself. They do not need to absorb the kinetic cost of a first strike. They only need to create the perception of one. The nuclear liability is no longer the missile in the silo, but the uncertainty in the command bunker. An adversary does not initiate a systemic attack blind. They require a final, live fire test to calibrate the blueprint for collapse. This is not a warning. It is the pre-attack checklist. The calibration shot will occur within 12 months. It will manifest as a cascading data corruption event in a core financial clearinghouse, originating from Northern Virginia's data center nexus. For 6 to 18 hours, large-scale financial settlements will freeze. The official cause will be technical failure, a botched software patch. This attribution is a feature, not a bug. This is not an outage. It is a data acquisition mission. CSIS analysts project the adversary will measure the Federal Reserve's emergency liquidity response, observe how domestic political fractures paralyze a unified reaction, and quantify the system's true fragility. The event provides the final variables needed to calculate the precise pressure required to trigger a full-scale solvency crisis. The markets will stabilize, the media will move on. But the data from this glitch will confirm the viability of the attack vector. It will be logged not as an anomaly, but as the successful test of a weapon designed to make America defeat itself.